Civility is a sham. Civility is a facade. Civility is bullshit. What's the ultimate resolution of conflict? Think about it. When two people or two groups of people have a disagreement, what is the ultimate way to resolve that disagreement, to resolve that conflict? Think about it. It's war. They go to fucking war. That's what happens in society. A quote unquote civilized society. Right? A society that is deemed civilized by itself. It deems itself civilized, right? But the ultimate resolution of conflict is literally gathering up groups of people to kill each other for some concept, for some ideology. And this is civilized.
So, in a society, in a civilization that is self-proclaimed civil, their ultimate resolution of conflict is war, killing each other. Not gathering together and solving their conflicts using logic, reason, and science and rationality. No. Basically, my idea is better than yours inherently, so I'm going to kill you. And the other party is thinking the exact same thing. And so what you have basically is history is written by the victors. People that win, they get to write history. It doesn't matter what actually happened or who was in the right? Because the victors, they make up what's right. It's all arbitrary. But the funny thing about it is, see, here's the thing. These societies, these states, these countries, whatever you want to call them, they'll go to war and kill for their ideology, but then they'll try to frame it as something virtuous, something heroic. You know, they'll try to frame it as a necessary thing that needed to be done, something necessary. All right. But then they'll go on and say that war, you know, they'll try to frame brute force and genocide as something necessary to defend your freedom. You know, they'll try to make it sound noble and virtuous and heroic. But then when they're called out on the atrocities that they've caused, they'll try to frame it under the guise of, oh, they were just men taking orders. They were just men doing their job. Some of the worst atrocities in human history have been caused by men taking orders. That's not heroic. That's not virtuous. That's not rational. Blind obedience? How is that something to be admired? How is blind obedience something to be idolized, worshipped? I don't understand. What about thinking for yourself? What about logic? What about rationality? What about reasoning? What about the scientific method? Doesn't make sense. But I understand it. I understand why these people use these such immoral concepts to basically spread their ideologies. Because at a fundamental level, at an innate level, humans are selfish. And so when you want to convince someone to accept your ideology, you can convince them with a valid and sound argument, right? You can reason with them, or you can use some sort of deception and exploitation and manipulation to get them to follow your ideology. Now, see, the first one, the former, may be difficult because, by and large, most humans don't really use logic and reason. They don't really make decisions based off of reason. But the other one, the latter, may actually be more effective if you're thinking from the end justifies the means, right? Because humans are predisposed to have cognitive biases, use logical fallacies, and have this sort of superstitious mindset, right? Humans have a predisposition to, they have this preponderance to fear, to be willfully ignorant, to make up an answer, to comfort themselves when they actually don't have the answer. And therein lies how concepts such as God and religion were constructed. Because I think God and religion, these concepts were created out of ignorance and fear. Ignorance, when you don't know something, and that makes you uncomfortable. So rather than accepting your ignorance to then go on a quest for knowledge, some humans would rather make up a comforting answer, even though the answer is not actually substantiated, because they fear the unknown. And when you have a society of people and you want to get these people to conform to your rules, to your laws, to your ideologies, instead of reasoning with them, which may be hard, so it may be harder than, making up something that is a panacea, which is something that can be posited for any reason, such as a deity, you know, the invisible magic man that watches everything you do, and if you disobey him, he'll burn you for eternity. You know, that informs action on a lot of people. That actually convinces a lot of people to conform, to be subjugated by some type of rule. And so when you want your group of people, your society to prevail, to survive, what is a way to ensure this? Right? What is a way to ensure this? To make your group of people the chosen ones. Your group is chosen by the almighty deity, the almighty creator of the universe. Your people are inherently better than the other people. They have intrinsic value because they were chosen. They were deemed worthy by the omnipotent, omniscient creator of the cosmos. It creates this us versus them mentality. It creates this tribalistic mentality. It creates this, you know, my group is right, my group can do no wrong mentality. And that is the thin veil, the facade that society and civilization is founded on. Here's the thing. There's a discrepancy. There's a misunderstanding of why civilization came to be. There's a misunderstanding of how all of these structures, rules, and things of that nature came to be, and why they continue to be what they are. Basically, to sum it all up, it is not from the benevolence of the butcher or the brewer or the baker that we get our dinner, but it is from their regard for their own interest. You know, the farmer doesn't produce the food because he's just a great guy, you know. He doesn't do it just because he's this good guy that cares about the well-being of society. You know, he's doing it because it's in his best interest. He's looking out for himself, which inadvertently benefits society to some degree. You know, it's a side effect. It's a byproduct, not the sole goal or purpose, right? See, I can take that sentiment and you can apply it to other aspects of society, such as following the law, following rules, right? You know, people like to make it out to be this simplistic, you know, moral code. The good guys and the bad guys, you know. You break the law, you're a bad guy. You deserve to go to prison, go to jail. But the thing is, you know, most people, they don't obey the law because they're just this good guy. They don't obey the law because they're this compassionate person with some sort of moral high ground. You know, they're not just this morally sound person. No. They follow laws because they fear the repercussions. They fear the artificially imposed social consequences of breaking the law, which is, you know, going to jail, getting beat up, or, you know, getting raped in prison. LOL, prison rape, because, you know, getting raped is funny for some reason. But that is why most people obey the law. You see, that is another thing. That brings me to this other point. Passivity. You know. See, most people have this simplistic moral code, right? You know, as long as you don't kill anybody, you're a good person. You know, as long as you don't rape anybody, you're a good person. Well, way to set the bar low for a moral philosophy. You know, that's pretty low standards, don't you think? Anyway, so basically, they try to make it out to be that as long as you don't do those things, you know, you're a good person. But that totally isolates and doesn't highlight or encompass the tons of other immoral actions that can be done, or the intentions of people attempting to do immoral actions. You know, you can't say that someone is inherently a good person just because they're a victim, or just because they're in a privileged position. You can't just say that someone is a moral person. You can't make a moral judgment solely based on whether something is legal or not. I don't know if you guys remember, but you know, slavery was legal. You know, just an example. But you know, there are plenty of law-abiding assholes. I mean, I'm pretty sure you know this. There are plenty of law-abiding assholes, you know. No, he doesn't kill anybody. No, he doesn't rape anybody, so I guess he's a good person. You know, I don't think that makes any type of good moral code, right? You know, there's this idea of objectivism. You know, this absolute static guideline of morals that are the same in every situation. And I think a lot of people have this type of, you know, simplistic thinking when it comes to morality and ethics. Because I think that, you know, really it's intellectual laziness, because a lot of people, they like to think that they're a good person without actually doing anything. You know, it's like people are egotistical, people are self-centered, but a lot of people, you know, those same egotistical and self-centered people are necessarily sociopaths, you know, all of them. So they want to feel like they're doing something. They want to feel like they're a good person without actually doing anything. You know, that's why they have these things like virtue signaling and, you know, doing, you know, supposedly good deeds and recording them and posting them on the internet and social media and doing things in public and doing things to save face and things of that nature. But here's the thing. life isn't black and white. You know, there's a lot of gray. There's a lot of gray area. There's gradients. There's a spectrum. You know, it's a lot of nuance. It's not just this simplistic good guys and bad guys. It's not that simplistic. It's not that simple. But people, they want to think that it is that simple. So here's the thing. When making moral judgments and judgments about ethics, one can't fall victim to irrational thinking and logical fallacies, you know, fallacious reasoning. And you have to be aware that we as humans are subject to cognitive biases, you know, flaws in thinking. And so, you know, for example, people judge themselves based off their intentions, but everyone else judges them based off their actions. You know, when something happens, you know, you'll think of it as, well, you know, I had the best intentions, you know, I tried to do the right thing. But everyone else, the world, will look at it as, well, look what happened, you know. Look at the result. Look what he actually did. Without any regards for what the reasoning behind that action was, or what the intention was. They just look at the result, and that's a cognitive bias, right? If you're driving and someone cuts you off in traffic, that guy's an asshole. What an asshole. Cutting me off in traffic. Come on. You want to tussle? God damn it. You know, he's an asshole. He's just inherently a piece of shit, right? That's what most people think. You know, fuck that guy. Who does he think he is? But if you cut someone off in traffic, well, oh, I was in a rush. I was in a hurry, you know. I was going to be late to this meeting, and, you know, I just, you know, I can't afford to be late, and, you know, I just want to, you know, provide a good life for my kids, you know, support my family. I just didn't want to be late because, you know, I tried my best. I seriously, I didn't mean it. It was an accident. It was a mistake. Because you like to think of yourself as a good person. So in order to balance out, to resolve this cognitive dissonance, what you've done can't be a bad thing, because that is in conflict, that is in direct conflict with what you already believe of yourself, what your preconceived notion of yourself is, which is a good person. That's the line, the basic line of thinking for most people, right? But it's fallacious thinking, fallacious reasoning. In a civilized society, the social contract is that individuals give up some of their power for the society as a whole to benefit. So basically, you know, I got your back, you got mine, you know, we help each other. Scratch my back, I scratch yours. We pick each other up off the ground. Got each other's backs, right? But how can that actually be the social contract that everyone obliges to? In a society where the de facto motto is, fuck you, got mine. You know, got mine, fuck you. You know, fuck you, got mine. Well, sucks to be you. You know, oh, you're struggling. You can't afford a place to stay. You know, you can't afford food. You know, sucks to be you, man. Got mine, fuck you. You know. So how does that coexist? Right? How does that coexist? So you have a society where civilization, the point of a civilization, you know, I thought the entire point of a society, at least I was under the impression that the entire point of a society is to increase the quality of life for its citizens. But how can that be the case when starvation still exists, poverty still exists, homelessness still exists? Because that's not the point of the society, and that's where civility, the concept of civility being a facade, comes into play. Because houses aren't made for people to live in them. They're made to make a profit. All these resources and products aren't produced to increase the quality of life for people. They're made to make a profit. That's why they're made. That's why they're made. How can you have a civilized society where the economic system is based off coercion? It's based off coercion, manipulation, and exploitation. So how does that coincide? How does that coexist? You know, you have an entire system where so the entire system is based off coercion. Coercion is just slavery with extra steps. Think about it. If you ask pretty much anybody, would they work their job if they didn't have to? I'm willing to bet that the overwhelming majority would say, hell no. Would they work their job if they didn't have to? Fuck no. But they do. Why? Because they're coerced into it. See, that's the thing. The reason why that works better than outright slavery is because they can tell you that, hey man, you can opt out. But you can't opt out. You can opt out, but the de facto is you can opt out from one position to another position in the same inherently flawed system. So think about it. When you have people telling you things like, if you want a living wage, get a better job. You know, that's just another way to say, I acknowledge that your job has to be done, but I think the person that has that job deserves to live in poverty. That's what you're saying. So how can you have a civilized society where you have the majority of the citizens with that type of mindset? No, you have, how in a civilized society do you have people that fear technological advancements because the system prioritizes perpetuating itself over actual progression? How? That doesn't make sense. Those things are diametrically opposed. They're literally the antithesis of each other. Just think about this. you'll have things, these necessities, being sold for an inordinate amount of money, right? Something that you need for survival would be so ridiculously priced, right? But then when someone has the money to pay for this ridiculously priced item, they're automatically assumed to be involved in criminal activity. You know, the authorities are alerted. How can this person have this inordinate amount of money that we charge for this item without breaking the law? You know, how, like, that in and of itself should just tell you how flawed the system is. So you charge an amount of money for something, but then when someone actually has the amount of money to pay for said item, they're assumed to be a criminal. So you're basically saying you can't succeed in your system without being a criminal. Oh, that makes fucking perfect sense. That makes perfect fucking sense. That explains the people who are at the top of said system. Criminal. Right? Speaking of criminals, you know, how the fuck is I'm trying to understand where this civility, this politeness thing came from. If society romanticizes violence, you know, they glorify violence. I mean, look at the movies, the video games, the sports. You know, they love fighting. They glorify fighting. Fighting, violence, war, killing, shooting, robbing. You know? They are intrigued by it. But at the same time, they think that it is, or not necessarily that they think that it's immoral, but they portray themselves as this morally virtuous, a morally virtuous leader, an ideologue for the moral high ground and the cornerstone of a civilized society. Whatever the fuck that means. How can a society that claims to be civilized be a zero-sum game? You know, how can a society that claims to be civilized inherently necessarily have winners and losers? You know, that someone's luxury is someone else's sorrow. You know, someone else's luxury is someone else's struggle, someone else's, you know, etc., etc. You know, how can you have a society, let's say, for example, to keep up the standard of, let's say, for example, Western civilization? You know, you have to have laborers that aren't paid a living wage, so to speak. Basically, this luxurious lifestyle that, let's say, for example, Americans live, comparatively, relatively speaking, is held up by slave labor. You know, sweatshops, child slave labor, you know, things of that nature. Here's the thing. There's this concept of, you know, put your nose to the grindstone. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Pound the pavement. Basically, this notion that struggle is equated to success. That struggle is something to look forward to. That is something to enjoy. What kind of masochistic shit is that? First of all, it's not true. And then it's toxic. It's fucking toxic. You know, the concept of, you know, you're lazy. You're poor, you're lazy. Or you do this, you're lazy. But have you ever thought that maybe that person is not lazy? Maybe they just don't like that thing. You know, maybe they just don't agree with that thing. Has that ever occurred to you? That can be a reason for why someone doesn't do a thing. Not because they're lazy, because maybe they just don't like or agree with that thing. But I see why you're so hell-bent on saying that people are lazy. I know, I see why you want to call poor people lazy, because that agrees with your ideology. That confirms your preconceived notion that hard work equals success. Hard work determines success. Want to be successful, want to be rich and wealthy, you gotta work hard. I don't know, you know, I guess that sounds good or something. I don't know. You know, a meritocracy. You know, it has a nice ring to it, I guess. You know, I guess you can use that to, you know, rationalize and justify exploitation or something. I don't know. But you know what's another thing? You know, you have these old people romanticizing the past. You know, back in my day, it was better. Everything was better. You know, everything was just inherently better because it was in the past. You know, it was a simpler time. Why can't we go back to how it was back then? You know, everything was greater and better back in my day, back in the old days. You know, this romanticizing the past. You know. Then, you know, they wanna complain about the younger generation. You know, they wanna complain about some stupid, trivial bullshit like avocado toast. Motherfucker, y'all was racist. You were fucking racist. Like, and the thing about it is, it wasn't just like, oh, it's just a social convention, like, you know, people are racist in their own personal lives. But no, it was actually legislated. It was in the law. You couldn't vote because you were black. You couldn't do this because you were black. You were literally less than a human being. You were treated less than a human being because your skin was a darker tone, because you were brown. But that is funny. Like, it's kind of like, I don't know if maybe they just are incapable of looking at the world through a different perspective. But it's kind of like they just overlook that whole thing, you know, treating someone else as inferior because of their skin tone, you know. All right, Wilfred and Gertrude, because dying from preventable diseases and getting hanged and curb stomped because your skin is brown sounds wonderful. Like, when you go to jail, they say that you're paying your debt to society. But here's the thing, you're not actually paying a debt to society. You know, that's just something that I guess they think it sounds cool. What you're actually doing, you're not paying a debt to society. You know, you're paying the owner of the private prison to keep you incarcerated. That's what you're doing. You know, because, yep, even the justice system is for profit. You know, who would have thought, you know? Sounds like a great idea to me. You want to know how to make a just society? You want to know how to make a actual civilized society? This is what you do. Basically, you construct the rules of this society with the notion that you don't know who you're going to be or what you're going to be in that society. You construct a society in where you don't know what position you're going to be. You don't know what your ethnicity. You don't know how wealthy you're going to be. You don't know what socioeconomic class you're going to be in. You know nothing. You know, the idea is basically in a society where you don't know what you're going to be, that most people would construct the rules to be equality. You know, basically, there's this cake, and you get to cut the cake, but you get to pick a piece last. You get your slice of cake last. So how would you cut that cake? You know, I think that's a pretty useful idea. You know, a just society has principles of bodily autonomy. You know, you can't violate someone's bodily autonomy. Enthusiastic informed consent. You know, I think a just society should not only give respect and dignity to the living, but also to people that don't want to live anymore. You know, euthanasia, death with dignity. Just an idea. How are we a civilized society if we're not even on the same page? I mean, think about it. You know, that guy up the block, you know, he'll kill you for having a bad day. You know, that guy around the corner, if he sees you on the side of the road starving, he'll spit at you and say, get a job, you lazy ass bum. You know, people are looking out for their interest. You know, people are not on the same page. People don't have each other's backs. But there's this illusion that somehow they do. I mean, think about this for a second. It is an established social convention that superficiality being superficial is encouraged, endorsed, conditioned. You're conditioned to look at people superficially, to judge them superficially. Even in the workplace, economically. You know, oh, this person has ink in their skin. Well, don't hire him. He doesn't deserve to support himself. This person has dye in their hair. Fuck him. You know, I don't give a damn if he starves. I don't give a damn if he's homeless. This person has piercings. Scum. Fucking scum of the earth. You know, worst possible crime committed to humanity. You know, any form of self-expression, right? Any form of self-expression, anything that differs from any type of homogenous institution. You know, institutions, they want you to be a drone. They want you to be a cog in a machine. You're nothing more than a machine part. They don't give a damn about your mental health, your physical health. They don't give a shit. But just think about that though. Like, you're conditioned even on an implicit level. You're encouraged to be superficial. You know, who cares if this guy is a good guy, good heart, you know, great, just great guy, you know, compassionate, empathetic. Does he have money? You know, what can he do for me? You know, self-centered, you know, narcissism. It's a big one in society. Oh, this guy likes a different sports ball team than me? I'm gonna beat him up for that. I'm gonna physically beat him up. I'm gonna physically harm him. I'm gonna physically harm this person or these people because of something as trivial, trite, and meaningless as liking another sports ball team. How is that civilized? You know, and it's like when it happens, it's just like, oh, you know, some rowdy sports fans, you know, get into a tussle, a nice, charming, bro, you know, just some good old bros with a little friendly sports tussle, you know. They're just going ahead and roughhousing. They're just roughhousing. You know, this confrontation, this little conflict, no, it ain't nothing, man. We're just men being men, you know. But when a person who's in poverty, who's starving, doesn't have a place to live, if they steal food from a billion-dollar corporation, they're the fucking scum of the earth. They're just the worst human being that ever existed. They should rot in a cage. You know, they should be locked in a cage for the rest of their lives, apparently. You know, they're this thug, this, you know, just immoral, scum of the earth piece of shit to society. How do those two concepts coexist in a quote unquote, in a self-titled civilized society? How in a self-proclaimed civilized society can we differentiate between violence from a poor, from people in poverty, we determine that as, violence, scum, you know.
How, in a self-proclaimed civilized society, can we differentiate between violence from poor people and violence from affluent people? Whereas the people in poverty, when they commit violence, it seems as they're inherently worthless, they're inherently inferior, they're the scum of the earth. And the affluent people, when they commit violence and crime, it's just seen as wholesome, passionate, quirky.
How the fuck can we be a civilized society when we don't even allow people to die on their own free will? We don't allow people to consent to dying, but we allow them, society and the government forces them to participate in certain activities that are in their worst interest, to their detriment. But you can't even opt out. And if you can't opt out, it's slavery. It's just coercion, which is just slavery with extra steps. Doesn't make any sense. This type of civilized society takes a person who is consenting to using drugs and locks them in a cage with murderers and rapists. What type of society that proclaims itself as civilized doesn't even allow you to use substances of your choice? What sense does that make? I like to say, assuming that it is consensual, the best thing you can do for a junkie is to give him a clean needle. Yeah. Assuming that that person wants to do drugs, best thing you can do for them is give them clean drug paraphernalia or more drugs, high quality drugs. That's the thing. Because the drugs are illegal, there's no regulation on the drugs, so the people still are going to use drugs. Doesn't matter whether you make an imaginary proclamation or a rule that says you can't use this substance for some arbitrary reason. People are going to still do what they want to do. So what you have is people going on the black market and getting these unregulated drugs that are laced with who knows what, and which is causing deaths and tons of other things that maybe wouldn't be as severe if the drugs were regulated and in their purest form. Perhaps. Let's talk about masculinity. Let's talk about societal expectations for men. As a man in society, your role is the provider, the protector. You are to show no emotion. You are to exude this overwhelming sense of machismo. Yeah, I like to eat raw meat and run my head into a brick wall, 'cause I'm a man. You know, that's who you are as a man. You know, you get hurt, walk it off. Be a man. Suck it up and be a man. Walk it off like a man. Grow a pair. Stop being such a pussy. You know? And this is a civilized society. You know, you're supposed to take it on the chin. You know, provider. But fuck that. Fuck that shit, man. You know? That's just one example, right? That's just one example of societal expectations, not only for men, but for women, for minority groups, you know, LGBTQ, you know, poor people, whatever disenfranchised group of people, or any other people that are prejudiced, right? In a self-proclaimed civilized society. You know, because whether these traditionalists realize it or not, gender is a social construct. Toxic masculinity exists. Being trapped in the confines of masculinity and trying to be the most macho man out there, you know, trying to be Billy Badass. That's a load of bullshit. You know, another thing that I just don't understand? How racism and bigotry by the elderly is just hand-waved as, oh, he's just a product of his time, you know. Oh, that's how he was raised. It's like, I don't understand people that adjust their bigotry to the time that they're in. I never understood that. It's like at first, it's like, the niggers, they're subhuman. Only thing they deserve is to be owned by as property and working in my cotton and tobacco fields. Which evolved into, yeah, the niggers, yeah, they can be in society, but I think that we should be separated and they should have inferior resources. Which turned into, you know, they can have, I guess they can have, you know, some rights, but I just don't want them fucking my daughter. You know, I just don't understand. You see, but you see how that evolves. It's like they're constantly reevaluating their prejudice and their bigotry to fit with the time period that they're in. They're having this sort of post hoc rationalization to adjust their bigotry, right? To make some sort of lame rationalization, justification on being an asshole or being a piece of shit. It's like if those are your true core beliefs, then why can't you just say them out loud? Why can't you just say, I think these people are inferior because of their skin tone? Oh, because if you actually said that out loud, you would realize how fucking stupid it is. But you know which one really just, it saddens me, it kind of takes that that curiosity, and it just kind of just depresses me, really. It's this sentiment, this notion that parents toughen their kids up to conform to society rather than teaching them the skills to change society for the better. You know, this notion of, the reason why I beat and starved you was to toughen you up for the world. Yeah, the world's cold. No, that's child abuse. No, how is that going to make the world better? How is that going to make the world a better place? You know, I think a more rational, logical route to take would be to teach your kid the skills on critical thinking, how to, you know, be a free thinker, be an individual, be a person that you would want to be, so they can actually change the world rather than conforming to a world that is already, as most people think, a bad place, a cold place, a heartless place, void of empathy and compassion. It's really interesting when you hear people propose or point out a flaw in society, right? And they'll just say something like, well, it is what it is, man. It is what it is. Life ain't fair. That's just the way it is, man. They're saying life isn't fair, or it is what it is, or that's just how it is, to dismiss suffering and to justify artificially imposed social constructs and consequences. As if society isn't a great big social construct, as if these rules weren't created by humans, as if these policies and institutions and laws and rules couldn't be changed by humans. And it always coincides with whether or not those laws personally are in the interest of whatever person you're talking to. You know, these laws personally benefit me, so I don't care if they are to the detriment of this other group of people that live in the same society as me. I don't care, because I am a sociopath and lack empathy. That's what it seems like. What a bullshit argument. What a bullshit rationalization. Hey man, it is what it is. Hey man, it's the way God made it, man. You know? God's got a plan, man. God works in mysterious ways. Just bullshit. How the fuck can we be a civilized society when people are so oblivious to the implications, philosophically, literally, in every way, of bringing life into existence, bringing another life form into an existence that is, you know, pretty much the consensus opinion or idea is that life sucks. It's inevitable suffering. But yet they so flippantly want to bring in more life that are going to grow up and suffer. Not only that, but these people often lack the basic skills to raise life, to raise a human being. It's not like you need you need to pass a test or get a license to have a kid, to take care of a kid. No, any old jackass can do it. I think that's a problem. You know, it's a lot of hypocrisy, because on one hand, if you abuse a pet, if you abuse your dog or your cat, that's animal abuse. You're a piece of shit. That's the consensus is this guy is just a utter piece of dog shit. This guy deserves to rot. You know what? Don't even put him in the jail. Just let me put a bullet in his fucking head right now and get this shit over with. Right? But on the other hand, you have a society that mass slaughters animals by the billions for recreation. Right? Don't give me this excuse of, oh, we do it for food. We need to survive. We need to eat. You don't need to eat fucking McDonald's hamburgers. You don't need to eat fucking the flesh of another animal to survive. We live in an era of technological industrial advancement. You don't need to do that shit, that primitive shit. But yet, we as a society do it anyway. And the people who are taking the perhaps moral, virtuous route are seen as the crazy people, right? The vegans, the crazy vegans, the stereotypes, But yeah, like, that's just such a hypocrisy. It's people that claim to care about animals, and they clearly, to some extent, do. But there's this, I'm trying to point out, this compartmentalization, this cognitive dissonance, that they don't share that same emotional, or have that same emotional response as when they're eating meat, which is the flesh of an animal that was alive. Interesting. Human psychology.
In a civilized society, there's an undertone of someone deserving to be raped. LOL, prison rape. Don't drop the soap. As if anyone, for any reason, incarcerated in a correctional facility deserves to be sexually assaulted. That is morally abhorrent. No one deserves to be raped. But I guess, the type of society that incarcerates people for monetary gain, doesn't really care too much about human rights and morals, ethics.
And, you know, seems like it's just a de facto accepted thing that happens, and, you know, no one cares because these people are the scum of society. They are a separate society, right? You know, nobody cares about the rejects of society. No one cares about the rogues. If you don't, to most people, if you don't fit their definition, their subjective, arbitrary definition of what they think is a decent person, you know, which is subjective and arbitrary, not based on any fact, empirical evidence whatsoever. If you don't fit that definition, then you are scum and you don't deserve basic human rights and necessities. Let's look at the death penalty. How the fuck is that civilized? Some guy arbitrarily deemed as the ultimate arbiter of someone's life. How is that? I can't wrap my head around that one. The death penalty, capital punishment, killing someone, you know, that is immoral across the board, as far as I'm concerned. I just don't see, especially when a lot of people that are incarcerated or given the death penalty or put on death row are innocent, or even if they are guilty, the crime doesn't warrant their life being taken from them by the government in a way that's made to be official, in a way that's made to be somehow different than just any other killing. Another thing is the commodification of necessities, basic necessities. You know, you have these corporations commodifying a naturally occurring necessity for life, and they are selling this resource under the guise that they are producing something that benefits society. But companies such as water companies, you're not producing water, you're producing plastic, which is a hazard to the environment. That's what you're doing. You're causing harm to the world, not good. You're taking water from people that can use it, and then you're selling it while polluting the environment. But you're looked at as a charitable organization. You're looked at as someone who does good for the world. How the fuck does that work? Another bizarre thing about society, a quote-unquote self-proclaimed civilized society, is this notion of idol worship. You know, a guy throws a ball, he's a god. A guy talks on a beat, he's a god. A guy pretends to be another guy, he's a god. Now, I don't condone idolizing someone else or anyone. I don't condone worship. I don't condone, worshiping someone as if they were some sort of deity. I kind of disagree with that whole concept. Instead of blindly worshiping or following someone with devout reverence, how about being your own God? How about being your own individual? Don't be a follower. Fuck idolizing someone. Be your own fucking person. This idea that someone is more important because they are arbitrarily considered a celebrity, or that someone's life is valued more because they're famous. How is that civilized? Something else that's uncivilized. This so-called, for lack of a better term, attractiveness privilege. For example, if an attractive person tries to seduce someone, it's called flirting. If an unattractive person tries to seduce someone, it's called sexual harassment. What type of a double standard is that? And the thing about it is, it's not just some small, minor thing. This can have serious legal repercussions, right? If an attractive person does something, they're seen as charming, warm, bubbly. But if another person that's considered unattractive does the same thing, they're a creep, And that's just uncivilized. That's not fair. In a civilized society, we discriminate against people for things that they have no control over. And it's just accepted as the way things are. That's just the way things are. Life isn't fair, or some other lame rationalization. Another thing is the fact that prostitution is illegal. So in a society that is supposedly socially and technologically advanced, civilized, right? That's what they claim. In a self-proclaimed civilized society, commercial exchange for sexual intercourse between two consenting adults is illegal. They'll lock you up in a cage for that. Okay. And this shit ain't fucking civilized, man. Fuck society. If you're poor, you're left for dead. If you're poor, you're discriminated against. If you don't fit into some arbitrary mold that some guy created. Humans are their own biggest enemy. Who's the leading cause of human deaths?
What is the leading cause for human deaths? What is the biggest culprit? It's not some natural disaster. It's some human caused thing, some human made construct. The humans causing their own demise. But they're gonna put a facade over it and call themselves civilized, when in reality there's no difference between humans that claim that they're civilized and the wilderness. Because we're animals, regardless of how much the humans want to deny it, with their suits and ties and their briefcases and their sophisticated, convoluted jargon and bureaucracy, that means nothing. But reality stands. That it's no different than the wild. They took the circumstances from the wilderness. While they may have decreased the likelihood of dying or succumbing to those circumstances, they just replaced them with circumstances that they created. They replaced it with problems that they created. No, it doesn't matter that you shave your face, put on a fucking piece of fabric, call yourself something different. You can't escape the laws of nature, the laws of physics. Well, the universe has no intrinsic purpose, value, or meaning. And any purpose that you give to yourself is nothing more than a coping mechanism. No one's born on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. And we're all gonna die. No matter how many lies you tell yourself, no matter how much you try to delude yourself, you can't escape the fact that life is inherent, inevitable suffering, and the only relief to that is your inevitable, unforeseen death. Bye!